Okay, today we're going to be doing a engine replacement on a Toro Dingo 525 wide track, but this is also the same for a 525 narrow track. This uses the 25 horsepower Kubota diesel engines. So we started by getting the arms up, putting your safety arm down right here for safety. Pull out your side panels, little panel that goes there and panel that goes on the other side. Remove this panel right here, this little side panel with the 3 screws. Boom, boom, boom. Remove your back panel that we've already done, as you can see. Remove the bottom plate. There's going to be 2 bolts holding there, 2 bolts holding there, and then there's usually 2 bolts at the bottom. You can see one of the holes right there coming up, and that's going to expose your fuel tank. Those 2 hoses that are coming off right there, those are your 2 fuel hoses, one for supply, one for return. Before you take those off, you might want to take a picture of which port they go to in the fuel tank, because they have to go back the same way. If you reverse them, your engine will starve for fuel because one line's smaller than the other. And take those off after you know exactly how they go back on, and then remove your fuel tank out. Your fuel tank also has 2 electrical lines that go on it. There's your 2 ports that came off, and then your electrical is over here. So there's going to be 2 wires coming off it, so take the 2 wires off. The red or the orange goes in the middle, and the black goes on the outside as your grounds. And to remove your fuel tank, now we're going to come in, and there's a silver heat shield that sits on here with 4 bolts that go in. 1, the opposite side, and then 2 below. So go ahead and remove the 4 bolts and remove the heat shield away. There's a little prop here that you probably have to take out too to get the heat shield out. I've already taken the heat shield out. And then go ahead and take the muffler off. And the muffler is 4 bolts here. It's a little bit hard to get to with the heat shield and everything that's here, but you can do it if you use extensions and reducers. So take those 4 bolts off. And then there's going to be another bolt and nut that's holding on this side for the muffler, so take that off. And then there's a couple bolts that go in this way that hold the air filter on. Go ahead and take those off, and then remove the muffler. And then we're going to take the air filter housing off, which sits up here. So loosen it here, and then it gets detached with bolts, a couple bolts down here. Take that off, and then the air tube comes to, I don't know if you can see it, that orientation. It's actually underneath this piece right here. Air tube comes here, so take the little zip tie panel strap off of here, and then remove that, and remove your old air filter housing to expose it. And the next thing I'm going to do is come over here to the front and expose the radiator and oil cooler. So I'm going to take the overflow off, so it's 1, 2 bolts, and then the nuts are underneath that you have to kind of fish a wrench this way. So go ahead and then take this whole apparatus and remove it. And then we're going to take the front grill off, so it's 1 bolt here, 1 bolt there, 2 on the other side, and then on top, see this bolt right here, this one, and then 1 right there on the other side. Take that off, and then you can remove this front grill right here. And then also over here, take this front overflow off. You just unscrew this right here, and there's a little zip tie under there to remove the hose. And take that off before you move your front grill. Okay, now we got the front cover off and exposed the oil cooler and radiator. So now I'm going to remove the oil cooler and radiator and get it out of the way. So you're going to take this line off. This is for your hydraulic fluid. Do yourself a favor, and back here on this part of your oil cooler, you better take an 1 and 6, I think it's an 1 and 16 wrench, and hold that steady while you take this off. A lot of people will not do that, and this is, I believe, aluminum, and it will, aluminum or copper, I forget which one it is, but it will bend, and then you make a leak, and then you got to replace your oil cooler, and that's no fun. So hold that and take that line off, and then down here, one of your lower radiators for your antifreeze, go ahead and take this off, and then pull it back, and a lot of the antifreeze is going to fall out, so it's not a clean job, to say the least. And down here, what my guy's gonna clean out is, if you imagine underneath here All this dirt and debris needs to be cleaned out, and there's 3 bolts, 1, 2, 3 under there, that need to be removed, and those bolts hold a plate that kind of positions the radiator from moving around. So take those 3 bolts out and the plate, and then come over to the other side. Take these 2 lines off. Boom, boom. There's both for your radiator. Those have antifreeze in it. And then down here is your line for your oil cooler. So take this off right here, and the same deal back here on the actual oil cooler. Hold an 1 1/16 wrench on it before you try to pry this off, or you will bend that oil cooler and make it leak, and then that stinks. So I'll go ahead and take all those lines off, and you can actually pull everything back out of your machine. This whole thing right here with the shroud, everything besides your fan that's in there. So now I got the radiator and oil cooler out of the machine. I have another video on how to properly clean these things, and you probably want to check that out so they're properly cleaned. What happens is a lot of filth gets between the oil cooler, which is the smaller one on top, and the radiator behind it. It's 2 different assemblies, and just a bunch of debris gets stuck in between those and could cause your engine not to cool as it should. So it's definitely worth your time, since it's out, to check that video up and clean this thing out properly, which we will do. And now I'm going to come back over here to the engine, and I'm going to the drive belt right here. I'm going to go ahead and take this spring right here off. I use a Panduit strap right here on the top of the spring to help pull it off, and then remove the spring and the spring cover, and that loosens this belt right here. Then I'm going to come in the back of the engine here. And you see this silver thing right here? This is your auxiliary pump, and I'm going to remove the auxiliary pump from the housing. So if you look back there on the top of that, top of it, there's I think it's a 5/8 bolt that's threaded into the back of the engine housing. So go ahead and take that bolt out, and then there's a bolt right under there, as you can see. Take that one out too. These are the ones I'm talking about right here. There's 2 bolts, and once you do that, you can take this pump assembly, and you can just pull it backwards, and it disengages it from the engine via a little white plastic coupler to get it up out of the way. And you have to pull this back out of the way to actually remove the drive belt, which I'm going to do too. So I've taken the V belt out, and now I'm over here on the left side of the engine, and I'm going to start taking off my electrical. So the first thing I'm going to do, which actually I did do it before I even started messing around with anything, is disconnect the battery. So after the battery's disconnected, then go ahead and start taking your positive off your starter right there. You got another wire that's going to be disconnected from your starter, and another wire in the back, that blue one, is going to be disconnected from your starter. And then you have this switch that needs to be disconnected. So just take that little screw right there and remove the line, and then you come in here in your alternator, you have this to take off. Can't really see it, this one. And then towards the top, which they kind of hit everything, there's another one that goes into your alternator. It's below that dipstick right here. And then this one comes up for your thermo switch. And then just, take that one off too. So disconnect all the wires from your wiring harness. And usually what I do is I'll take this nut and bolt out, and then I'll just take these wires and just fold them back here to get them out of the way to get ready for the removal of the engine. Now we're on the right side of the engine, so what we're going to do, starting at the top, remove this hose right here, which is your return fuel hose. Go ahead and remove that. And then there's another wire. This wire I've already taken off. It's usually sitting right here, so go ahead and take this wire off. What else we got at the top? That's your fuel stop solenoid. I've already disconnected that wire, so go ahead and take that one off. Come down here to the side. And what do we have here? We got a couple grounds right here. That's going into the block, so go ahead and take that bolt out to release the grounds. And then this is your fuel pump wires right here, so go ahead and separate that, separate from the fuel pump. This is your supply of fuel, so go ahead and take this hose off right here where it connects to your injection pump. And trying to think what else I forgot. And then you got to take your throttle linkage off. So go ahead and unscrew this, loosen these two nuts off right here, and then remove the throttle assembly from this right here, and then just get it up out of the way, get ready for removal. Then your main oil drain is at the bottom on this one. They modified this one, but let's see if you can see it. It's even lower than that. Underneath this fan, there you can see it right there. That's your main oil drain at the bottom, so go ahead and separate that hose from that fitting. It should be held in there with a little tie, a zip tie panduit strap. So go ahead and you can remove it there, but then oil is going to be drain, you know, out of your engine. So you can actually drain it out of the bottom of your machine, usually where you drain your oil. You can drain that first and then separate this right here for engine removal. This one they just kind of cut and then they stuck the end of it right here. So I'm going to actually pull this engine out before I drain the oil because they modified the machine here. So I think that, and we're almost ready to pull it. So now the last step before I remove it is I'm going to separate the engine from the actual frame of the machine. So over here, this nut and this bolt, which the bolt is actually underneath here, you're gonna have to separate this nut from the bolt and then slide the bolt down and then out of the way. And that separates this shock mount from the actual engine, or from the actual frame of the machine. So you gotta do it one here, one back here, and then two on the complete other side. And after you removed all four of those bolts, and this engine's ready to come out. So what I do is I use forks on another machine, and I'll grab a strap, and I'll grab right here on this eyelet, one, and then right here on this eyelet. Strap them like that, put the forks in it and lift it up, and then pull it out that way. And you get it ready for swapping parts from the bad engine to the new engine. Okay, now we're going to switch and swap all the parts from the bad engine to the new engine. So right here is the fan. Keep in mind the fan goes, you can put it in backwards. The fan is supposed to blow air towards your oil cooler. If you put it in backwards, it's going to blow air back that way and eventually burn up your engine overheated. So make sure you put the fan on the exact same way you took it off. So I took the old fan off here, and then there's a coupler behind it that you also have to remove. It's got 3 Allen bolts on it. Just take the 3 Allen bolts out, put the coupler on, and then put your fan on the coupler and put these 4 bolts back on with the washers. I use the Loctite on both of those, the coupler and the fan, so you don't have to worry about it coming off. And then go ahead and put your throttle cable holder back on. Just uses the 2 bolts that actually come with your engine. So put it on there. Your side mounts, I just take the full side mount off, 1, 2, all the bolts. I think there's 5 or 6 on each side. Take it off and then put it on the new engine. I don't take any of these off. It's just extra work. Come in over here. Of course, you did this side mount over here on the opposite side, and put this heat shield on. 2 bolts on the back of the heat shield, and then you're going to have to reuse one of the bolts that's actually on your new engine. So there's 3 bolts that hold that on. And then you want to do the back bell housing and pulley. So take your bell housing off. It's 1, 2, 3, 4 bolts. Pull it off, and then going to remove your pulley, which is held in by all these Allen heads right here. So take them off, put them back on. I use Loctite on these Allen heads, and I don't put any on the bell housing, but you can if you want to. And then this little side stand that holds your muffler, just 2 bolts, 1, 2, and that is pretty much it. Time to put it back in the machine. So we got the engine back in on the machine. If you look here, with the shock mount still on this receiver mount right here, it's got a bolt that goes up to it or goes down, it doesn't matter. And then on top is a washer, and then the stand, this stand that goes between the 2 on the closest side goes in it, and then just lock the nut and bolt down. You do the same thing on the other side. And then being on the right side, we're gonna go ahead and hook up your main fuel line to your injection pump, which is right here with this little clamp. and then your return fuel line. We hooked it right back up here past your injectors, and then just run your fuel line down where it goes to your fuel tank. Run it out of the way so it doesn't hit any of these pulleys, so it doesn't cut it when you're using it. And then start hooking up your electric. Your glow plugs wire needs to go here, so install that. What else we got? Install your connection for your fuel stop solenoid, which is right here. You got 2 grounds that are going to come up here, one in this bus and then one right here, and then it's secured on the back side with this bolt that you took out of the other engine. So secure that. Hook up your fuel pump wiring, which is right here. What else did I do over here? And then hook up your throttle assembly. So this pinches down on the wire here when you get it set to where you want it to be for high and low throttle, and then just tighten these 7/16 nuts to hold it in place. I think that's it that we did over here, and then put your wires back in this little holder thing to keep them away from the fan. So then you're going to come to the back of the machine, and I'm going to hook up your auxiliary pump. Ow. Auxiliary pump back here. It's still hanging off the back. So I haven't taken all I did is took the 2 bolts out to remove it and get it out of the way. So that's what I'm going to do to put it back. You can take these hydraulic lines off to make your assembly a little easier hooking this back up, but that's up to you. So what I'm going to do is push this back, and see that white coupler right there? See those teeth? I'm going to have to kick this left and right so it sits in perfect, and then line that hole up with that hole right there, and then put your bolt in the top and the bolt in the bottom. And these bolts, you definitely want to use the red bolt stuff. It's slipping from my mind right now what it's called. So the stuff that prevents bolts from working its way loose. I can't remember what it's called for whatever reason. So do that, and then your auxiliary pump is back on. You also want to check that white coupler right there and make sure it's in still good condition and that the teeth aren't destroyed. If the teeth are destroyed, just go ahead and replace it before you hook it back up. It's called nut lock. That's the word I was thinking of, nut lock. So hopefully before you actually put that auxiliary pump down, you went ahead and ran your drive belt around the pulley at the back of the engine before you installed the coupler and the auxiliary pump. So we ran the belt around the pulley down there, and then you see the other pulley comes up to the side and pushes against it. So I had to reinstall this spring right here. The easiest way to do it is with a big zip tie. Take a zip tie, run it around there, lift it up, and then drop it on this little hanger right there. So now the drive belt's installed, ready to go. And then come down to the left side of the engine. And we're gonna run a whole bunch of wires again. So up here, you're gonna put your thermo switch back in, which is right here. Thermo switch. Then you're gonna have 2 wires that come into your alternator. This back wire, and then this front wire right here. You have 3 wires that need to go to your starter, actually 4 wires. So you have to replug this in right here. This blue one goes to the back of the starter. And then you have 2 positives that go right there on that terminal. And run this right here for this switch. And go ahead and put these back in here and lock this down. Then we're ready to put the radiator and oil cooler back in. Alright, so what we're gonna do now is come to the bottom of the engine before I put all these hoses away. See that blue line at the bottom that you can barely see going through both of these? That's the oil drain. So hook the oil drain up to the bottom of the engine, and then put your pando strap on it to tie it off. And then I went ahead and put the radiator and oil cooler back in. Hook this line up, make sure to hold back here on the oil cooler before you tighten this up so you don't break it. Put on that line down here all the way up to your engine, tighten those 2 down. Go to the other side. Hook these 2 up, boom, boom, and then to the engine. Those are all locked down, ready to go. And then your hydraulic fluid line down there. Make sure to hold with 1/8" on the back part of the oil cooler before you tighten so you don't bust it up. And then I went ahead and filled this thing up, the engine, with oil. That's where you add your oil in. It takes just a little bit less than a gallon. This particular type of engine takes 10W30 or 10W40 diesel engine oil. So there's your dipstick to check right here. And then I also checked the hydraulic fluid level on this machine, and it was good. I'm gonna come over and hook up this air filter assembly with the 2 bolts that go right, screw right into your engine there. I use Loctite on those 2 bolts because of the vibration. And then hook up your air filter hose. And it's kind of hard to see right there where it comes out of your engine with that little Pandora strap. And lock that down. Then I put 2 new air filters, safety and an outside, on the engine. No need to run dirty air filters. And another thing that you want to do is, I'm going to put this outside shield on next right there. So you're going to put the outside shield. You're going to hold this kind of like this, and this overflow, there's a piece of gasket or foam on that side that's cut out to receive this, so just make sure you snake this up like this. And then for your fan, just make sure that the spacing here on your fan, between your fan and your shroud, is the same from this side to that side on both sides. Then check up and down and make sure it doesn't hit. You'll have to adjust by pulling the whole assembly back and forth. You just don't want the fan to hit the shroud. It's pretty tight. Okay, so we put the front grill on here and run the overflow line through here, up here, and then you just screw it in, screw this cap, this reservoir cap, onto the bottom hose, and then put the 2 bolts here, 1, 2 on the other side, and then you start these 2 bolts, that one there and that one there. Don't tighten them down. And then if you need to adjust in here, like if this fan is touching this side of the grill, you need to pull everything this way and pull everything that way, and then get, you know, the same amount of space here than is on the other side, and make sure the fan's not hitting anywhere. Once you get it where you want it, then you come back up here and tighten these 2 down all the way, and that kind of holds the radiator and the whole cooler in place. It's now going to fill it up with antifreeze, so I'm going to fill up here. It uses 50/50 antifreeze, so take that off. Take this bolt off right here. It's 3/4. Just take that off, and then over here is a valve right there in that little slot. Undo that valve so it opens up a little bit. You don't have to fully take it off, but just so it opens. What you do is you start filling antifreeze into here until you see antifreeze come out of there, and then you stop, and then you close that port back down. Then you fill up antifreeze here until it comes out here, and then once it comes out here, then you close that down, and then you fill antifreeze all the way to the top, and then put the cap back on, put this bolt back on. And then over here, you want to, there's a line over here, you want to fill antifreeze over to the overflow to that line. And then when you run your machine, you know, run it for like 5-10 minutes, then come back and check after it's cooled down. Check all your levels, your oil level, your antifreeze level, and your hydraulic fluid level, and then add if necessary. So then coming to the back. So coming to the back, we went ahead and hooked up the fuel tank back. So you got your main line, you can't see it, but on the other side of this is your main fuel line and your return line. They have to go back the same way you took them off. One of the easiest ways to do it is one port is bigger than the other, so the big port goes with the wider hose and the smaller port goes with the smaller hose. And hook up your fuel sender. Your wires on your fuel sender here, red in the middle, black on the outside, and then put your back plate on, tighten that down, then put this side panel on, tighten that down, and then you put your back panel on here. So now we're going to install the muffler. The muffler has 4 bolts. We used a new gasket. 4 bolts to hold on the manifold. 1, 2, 3, 4. Stick those on. There's a muffler that goes, or I'm sorry, there's a bolt that goes on the back end of the muffler. I'll show you in a second. And then you got to run these bolts from the air filter assembly into the actual muffler. So one there, go to the other side. See that bolt right there? That's the other one that you got to install. And this is the other muffler bolt right here. You see right up in there, there's the bottom of the bolt that holds the left side of the muffler so it doesn't rattle off. Install that, then install your little heat shield behind it. Then come down here and there's your bleeder screw right here. Just crack this open, I'll take it off, it's 10 millimeter. Take it off, put the ignition switch into the run position and wait till you see a continuous amount of flow of fuel coming out of this bleeder right here, and then turn your ignition switch to the off position, close this up, and you should be able to start your machine and you're ready to go. Just check all your fluids and run it for about 5 minutes, make sure everything's good, turn it off, let it all the fluids go back down, and then check your fluids again and then add if you have to.